remember that. Trust in faith, he said. Wait in faith and trust God's timing. Christian adults develop faith when they wait for God to deliver them in times of suffering. Habakkuk was becoming agitated because he had not heard from God. Yet neither do we always heed the axiom. He may not come when we want him, but he is always on time. Now, this lesson includes a lot of the phrases and axioms that we say a lot. You know, he's an on-time God. He may not come when we want him, but he's on time. There are many of those that fit into this lesson. Christians, adults, need faith and learn to be patient in hard times. God continues to deliver us through difficult times. Trouble don't last always. So we can sit down and those axioms, we do this whole lesson. We wouldn't have to talk about much because what he's giving to us is things that we know and should know and to keep in our heart. Now, this is, I want to read the first chapter of I would like to go back and let us read the first chapter of Habakkuk. And this was where Habakkuk had asked God some questions. And we want to go back and see what those questions were. The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet received. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen, or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore, the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted. And one of the things there, they thought that money, when you had money, that you could buy justice. You know that, and so that was one of the reasons that Habakkuk was upset, because it just seemed like the rich were able to get whatever they wanted, and that was part of what he saw in the Babylonians. The Lord's answer: look at the nations and watch, and be utterly amazed. For I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe even if you were told. I am raising up the Babylonians, that ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth to seize dwelling places not their own. They are a feared and dreaded people. They are a law to themselves and promote their own honor. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their cavalry gallops headlong. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like a vulture swooping to devour. They all come bent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind and gather prisoners like sand. They deride kings and scoff at rulers. They laugh at all fortified cities. They build earthen ramps and capture them. Then they sweep past like the wind and go on guilty men whose own strength is their God. Now the Babylonians, as we can see, were some very treacherous people. They believed that they were the most powerful. They followed their own law. They were fighting people in wars, and they were capturing people, capturing their homes, and they were just doing some really terrible things. And so Habakkuk could not understand. He saw all of this going on, and he didn't understand why God a holy God, would not do something about all of this sin that was going on. And that's sort of the way we are today. You know, we live in an evil time. And so when we stand back and we see different things happening, we have to stop for a moment because we are looking at the same thing that they looked at. And so are we going to ask God why he won't come and do something to the people who are doing the things that we do not like or that we think are really against his word? Now, what do you think? Why do you think that God chose to use the Babylonians to punish Judah as opposed to doing some other things? It was a shock, he said, that when he was going to answer the question and tell him what it was that he was going to do, he said, "You're going to be amazed." And he would be amazed because he couldn't believe this. You know, it was just beyond him. He thought, well, I don't know why you're not doing something about this, God. That's true. And you know, we said that waiting and trusting are our key words for today, because we want to make sure that we are able to wait on the Lord. Wait, I say, on the Lord, because he says to us, you're not going to get everything you want at that particular time, but you need to be patient enough for him to allow him to do his work, to allow him to take care of whatever the matter may be. And the faith part of this is that we have to trust and believe. Now, it's not a blind faith. It's not just like we just believe whatever. We can do just as Habakkuk did. And we can ask questions of the Lord. But we have to be careful that we understand that he is in charge of it all. And that even though we may want to ask him, well, why don't you punish these people because they're being so terrible, that even though we may want to ask that question, we have to understand that he is in control and that he can settle any matter in his time. And you know, I'm a big proponent about in his time, because, you know, as you all know, I've said before, when I was sick, I kept saying, you know, well, I'll be well next week, or I'm going to be well next month, oh, I'll be well by Christmas. But God had another plan. And it took me 8 years before I felt as though he was allowing me to come out of that darkness. So we have to remember that it's his time. Okay, so now Habakkuk has asked him, well, you know, well, why haven't you done something to these people? And he said, I'm going to do something to them, but before I'm going to put the Babylonians in charge, and now they're bad people, and they're going to get theirs down the road, but right now I want to use them. They're part of my plan, and I want to use them in order to punish Judah. Now, Habakkuk's second complaint that he had, O Lord, are you not from everlasting? My God, my Holy One, we will not die. O Lord, you have appointed them to execute judgment. O Rock, you have ordained them to punish. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil. You cannot tolerate wrong. Why then do you tolerate the treacherous? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? You have made men like fish in the sea, like sea creatures that have no ruler. The wicked foe pulls all of them up with hooks. He catches them in his net. He gathers them up in his dragnet, and so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his dragnet, for by his net he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest food. Is he to keep on emptying this net, destroying nations without mercy? Now, here's Habakkuk has a second question. You know, at first it's sort of like, why? Why did you do this? And then he also wants to know, now, first we'll talk about when are you going to do something about it? And why did you choose these people to be the arm of judgment for you against Judah? So we see now that Habakkuk had, he had demonstrated questions to the Lord, and we see where we pick up in our lesson today. So we know now that he was asking questions of the Lord, and it was almost like he was demanding an answer. But we have to remember, who are we to demand an answer from God? He wanted to know, he was confused. And we can be confused in our world today because we don't understand why certain things are happening. We don't understand why the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. We don't understand why those people who are doing terrible things continue to prosper. Because sometimes you think, well, you try to do the right thing, you try to follow the word, and yet you don't seem to be prospering as someone who is not following the word. So we have to remember that it's God's plan and that he is in charge, and that oftentimes he puts us in situations so that we can struggle, so that he can answer our prayer, but in his time. All right, let's start over at where we pick up in the lesson today. What is the importance of trust for believers? I mean, why is trust important in our faith? And it's the way that Christians develop their faith. If we trust and believe, and we trust without question, and that doesn't mean we don't have questions, but we do not question God. That we must trust in order for us to be able to develop the kind of faith that is necessary as followers of Christ. Christian adults trust that God will ultimately do what God has promised. Never let the hopes and prayers of the believers, he will not let them return void or empty. His promise never to leave us or forsake us is very real and is held onto by believers. Faith is the foundation, part of the believer's arsenal in our relationship with the Lord. However, one cannot ignore that through our faith, we gain trust in the Lord. Though nothing is known of the prophet Habakkuk, we know something of his times. He was during the time of where they had kings, that first they had a really, really good king, and he believed that he lifted up the temple and took care of everything. Then his son came into power, and he erased all of the things that his father had put into place. He erased all of that. And so the Babylonians had just gotten out of control. They thought that they were the most powerful, and they were acting like they were the most powerful. What kinds of questions do you have that you think of that you wish you could ask God? I'll give you a minute. What kind of situations are you in or experiencing that you feel like, I would like to ask God this? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They obviously don't see what we see, and I was thinking about that this morning, about how I was listening on the way in about the election and how South Carolina didn't give him the knockout punch that he wanted to get rid of Nikki Haley, and the things that he says, the things that he does, I just don't understand. And I think sometimes we obviously, he's there for a reason. God has a plan. We don't know what it is. And I'd like to ask God, what is the plan? You know, how do you plan to use Trump? I'd just like to know. So it's the kind of situation where, you know, I'm sure I'll just leave it like that. I know that there is a plan and that he is part of the plan. Um, and that's now, and that is really true. And when you think about how they follow him without any hesitation, I mean, it's like, and whatever he does, I have never seen anybody that can do as much stuff as he has done, and the people have not said, you know, you need to stop. I mean, they have not said it, and it seems like to me they're getting worse and worse. Down here?
In that situation, God would take care of everything.
Yeah.
Do it as well as the man. We do what we have to do as people. We go to the home, so that's our way to get rid of this thing. God has done.
Yeah. Well, that's the. I would say that's the one thing out of all this that we can can have faith in, is the fact that God does have a plan for all of this, and I just hope I will be able to be around to see the fruition of the plan whenever it is settled. Because I can't even imagine us again with Trump as president, but we might as well imagine it because it could very well happen. Would you ever have thought that you would have seen January? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to say this because I think we're kind of headed towards one side, but the reality is, and why if you think about why he's getting so much of a back vote, is because there's an issue on both sides. Yes, there's an issue on both sides, and so we cannot, if we're going to be honest, and we're going to have this discussion, we have to be honest and we have to be real about it, that there is an issue on both sides of the platform. So then where does that land us as people of God, right? And our responsibility becomes speaking the truth to whoever is in power. And the truth is that the reality, the hard facts are that there is an issue on both sides. So then we have to figure out, especially when speaking about Habakkuk, his questions, you know what I mean? Where do we see God? Where does God fit in this puzzle? What is God asking? Because we've been told for so long to pick the lesser of two evils. Why should we as people of God be put in a position, I mean really think about it, to where we're choosing the lesser of two evils? So then what would God do, right? If we look at prophets just biblically, if we follow through, just look at prophets, and we understand as a people, what becomes our responsibility? And I think what the danger is, we've chosen platforms, and then was never really honest in saying that, hey, this is not right, whether it's Democrat, Republican, or whatever. There's issues, I'm just saying, like we're hammering in on Trump, but there's issues on both sides, and we can't avoid either. We can't sidestep either, so we have to, if we're gonna have this, I'm only saying this because it's important to me. If we're gonna have this discussion, then we have to discuss the issues on both sides so that we know what we need, well, so that we know what we want. Because most of us are voting on one area, in one area, and they're relying us to vote, and they're relying on the things that he said that we disagree with, when it's two sides of the same coin. It's two sides of the same coin. There's no difference. You know, you have what you have is, and I'm sorry, but what you have is you have rich people and poor people. That's what you have. In this group, this elite group that is making policy, whether Democrat or Republican, how you think those policies are being made? I mean, we gotta be honest about the subject. Like, we gotta be honest.
Well, if you have two choices, what would God have us do? Choose the lesser of the two evils, or not vote at all? I mean,
Well, we've been told, right? Well, we've been told, that's what we've been told, right? And so we've sort of given up as Christians, I believe, we've sort of given up our power, and we've become divided because we miss how powerful our voice is when we come together and we dictate policy. In other words, there was a time in history where the prophet or where the preacher's voice mattered. But when we look over the past presidencies, you know what I mean? Where's that spiritual advisor? Where's that person that's in the president's ear, informing him, telling him what it is that God says, that God wants, that God desires, what God's ways are? You know what I mean? It's like our voice has become unimportant, right? And we're so divided. So you have the white evangelicals that are behind Trump, and then you have the black Christians that are behind Biden, and nobody's saying, wait a minute. As a Christian, supposed Christian nation, you know what I mean? What does, I wish I could find the Bible. What does the Bible say, right? And how well, and how does your policy, or what you're doing, or what you're bringing to leadership in whatever capacity align with what God says? So if the question, if we have the discussion that if we're sitting down talking to somebody and what they're bringing to the table doesn't align with what our God says, then, you know, maybe we ought to come together and use our power and our influence. At the end of the day, it's about what God says. It's about what God desires, and it's what we've got to wait for. So we're dealing with all this other stuff that we talked about when we talked in Romans chapter 1 and chapter 2. You know what I mean? This sin that's running rampant, and people are saying it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay, and it's a mess on both sides. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I still don't know what we're supposed to do. So we just pick somebody, you know, if they align with your views or not. You pick somebody and you just vote for them and pray that the Lord will handle it.
My grandmother had a saying, my mom used to say that her older sister, when she and her husband got married, and she said every time you turn around, they was fighting. So then she would go back to her home, you know, and so one day said that grandmama told her, she said, Lucy, say, why don't you just let the Lord, just sit down and let the Lord work it out. He can work it out. She said, Mom, I tried that, but the Lord is just a little too slow. I won't be happy.
Well,
I said, but when you try to help sometimes you make a bigger mess than when you would if you would just leave it alone. So I said, but she always said, the Lord is a little slow sometimes. I need to get in and help him.
and I think I think all of us
Yeah.
have felt that, and probably more than once, that you're waiting for an answer. You want to know, and sometimes he makes you wait. Yeah, he makes you wait. Okay, let's very quickly go through our scripture. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. Now, he says, I will stand upon my watch, which means that when you say you're going to stand, that means you're going to be definite. You're going to be there. Nothing is going to take you away. You're going to be in that one location. And he gave us the vision of being like a soldier on the top of you know how they had the castles and they built the walls around them. And so then they would have like a steeple, and then there would be an area where you could walk across that would be flat. And so he is saying that he's going to get on that, go up to that area that's upon the tower, because they had a lot of those on the tower, and he's going to wait. He's not going to ask God any more questions. He's going to wait to see what his answer shall be. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tablets, that he may run that readeth it. Now, the Lord, it's like he told him to write and wait. Write it down, and not on paper, not on papyrus. He told him to put it on stone, like Moses, so they could last. And he wanted them to be there and be available so that people could see this prophecy. They would be able to see what happened from years to come, that it wasn't something that was going to happen just that one day. He also wanted it to be plain so that everybody could understand it. You know, you've heard them say, you know, we're going to do the sermon so that even Aunt Jane could understand. So he was saying, I want you to do it, make it clear, make it plain. And that time, if you wanted to get the word out, you would get a runner or a heralder. And so he said that and he wanted it to be done in such a way that he could read it and go around and show it to people. He didn't want anybody to have to wonder about it. He wanted them to be able to read it, see it, and know what it meant. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. What's an appointed time? It's God's time, so it's the right time, Mr. Boyd said. And so it means that there's a time that's coming. It's not like we're just going to roll on along and see whether something happens, you know, Monday or Sunday or whatever. It's like this, on this particular time that God has chosen, this is going to happen. And at the end, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it. Though it might be slow, though the answer may come slowly, you know, don't lose faith. Don't lose your trust. You need to wait on it, because it will come. God has made promises to us, and he's not going to let us go forward without his promises being met. He said, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not be late. So he wanted to make sure that we understood that we need to wait on the Lord. You know, that's another one of the axioms that we say. We need to wait on the Lord. And in this situation, he's saying, I was telling Pastor that at first when I read it, I was thinking about a vision in terms of a person, their vision. In my old church in Wilmington, we started in a small church, and then we ended up moving and building this really big church. And on the wall in the new church is our pastor's head on a bronze plaque on the wall, and it states, the verse in Habakkuk. And so I had always thought of this vision as being something that, like that our pastor had a vision of how he wanted us to move forward. And so they were saying that it had happened. That the vision that he had, that we had begun to actually move along in that vision. He says, don't worry, it's coming. It will surely come. Not just maybe it'll come, it will surely come. Verse 4, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Now that's the if it's a take home, that's a take home for us. That we have to, we want to be just, and we become just by following his word, and accepting his life and accepting him into our lives. But faith is the fuel. Having faith is what moves us from place to place, moves us from person to person. He said, those people, they're not upright, they're not good people, but the just will live by his faith. Verse 5, yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Now, because first I wondered, why we threw wine in there. But that's one of the things that the Babylonians, they would drink to excess. It wasn't just they took a cup of wine, or that they took something within one of the celebrations or the ordinances of the church. They would drink and fight and do all kinds of terrible things. And so he said that he's a proud man. That meant that, he didn't care. They just did, because being proud and arrogant is not the way. And so that's what they were being. So he wanted us to know that don't be proud. Don't be arrogant. He said, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death. Hell is just wide and open. And it's as death. They were saying death is going to take everything that is brought to it. Death is going to take it. And this he was saying, so they just want to do things in excess. They're proud, they're arrogant, they drink, they do all these different things. And they cannot be satisfied. But they gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. So they had done these terrible things, but all nations, all people had been gathered to them. Now, God doesn't like what is that? God doesn't like ugly. We have a lot of action in there today. And so he made sure that he was telling him as a prophet and as a priest. Habakkuk was proud of his heritage, but he knew the wrong things that his people were doing, that the Jews were doing. And so he said, about the Babylonians, he said, you're going to take somebody that's worse than we are to punish us. I thought that was an interesting thing, but it was God's decision, and it was part of his plan. Because you think, why else would you do that? Why else would you specifically choose to do that unless he had a plan, and he knew where the plan was going? Now, Habakkuk had sought answers from the Lord, and he had gotten his questions answered. We talked about how, we shouldn't challenge God, but we are certainly able to ask questions. But we have to have an open mind, we have to wait, we have to be patient so that we can receive what he has to offer to us.
Sometimes we question God, we're not supposed to put you human, and certain things happen to you, so why God?
when you talk about faith, our unifying topic was waiting and trusting, and that through trust we develop our faith. We hope that we will continue to follow his word as it is written, and that we will be patient in hard times, and that we will trust in God. Any questions, or anybody has anything else to say?
Waiting has almost been eradicated from society today, in mostly all aspects of our lives. We have become very impatient people, and if we are impatient with those that we see, how can we be patient with him who we never see at all? We are an instant world. Everything now. And technology is making things now that are just, AI is gonna take over.
If it hasn't already. I'm going to say if it hasn't already.
But God wants us as Christians to share with others that you just gotta wait, just be patient, just be patient. I had to learn to be patient. As Ms. Maya said, when you ask God, why me? I've turned around and I've learned to ask God,
Why not?
what makes me so special?
Because if trouble can come to anyone, then why can't it come to me? When you talk about waiting, technology has come to the place where, I might be on my phone and I push a button, and if it doesn't come there right away, I'm pushing. And because we have even gotten accustomed to everything working fast. You change the station and it lingers for a minute, and you're pushing the remote control because you want it to happen fast. You want it to move. And just think about young people. How are we going to address them? Because they live in that world. I think I heard something last week about how they are the only generation that doesn't know anything but technology. This generation coming now, and I can take my telephone, my grandson. Next thing I know, they're doing this, and playing the game and they can take those things and do anything with them. And so it was saying that they're going to be the first one. So we've got to come up with a way to approach them, and we got to be fast because that's what they are. They are fast. And Pastor has some ideas about how to try to reach the new generation, another generation, and he'll be sharing those as we go along. But we're going to have to change. We're going to have to change.
We've changed.
I still think that we still need to teach our children even about the modern times, but teach them most of all about the word, and sit down and read the word and allow them to read the word and study the word too and stuff. And they can get in on technology and stuff that with all what happens now, but they're going to continue to do because it's a modern world now. But we can't just let our children not know and stuff. It has to be a taught thing and then a learned thing for our children of today.
It's funny how technology has trained us. We used to get up and go to the TV and turn the channel. Now you get mad if you're sitting on the sofa and can't find the remote.
And that's low level. The remote control is low level.
That's no
Yes.
level, because society has taught us to stop using what God has given us, the ability to get up and go to that TV and turn that channel, the ability to be patient and say, okay,
You know,
We're not using our minds anymore. We're letting the computers become our minds. We're not using our bodies anymore. We're letting computers I can sit at home by myself, surrounded by 4 remotes, and get so frustrated when Daddy used to tell us, don't change the channel. You went from channel 5 to channel 11 to channel 2.
I was just getting ready to say at our house, you know, we had remote control. It was us, you know. Yes, Daddy would call us from outside, come in and to get remote, to get him turn the channel on TV, and he was sitting right there in the TV right here. He called us now.
Or he tell you to move that antenna, no, that clothes rack, that had stuck in the antenna.
With the aluminum foil.
Over a little bit so the channel but we were using our minds and our bodies that God gifted us with. And now we're not. And like Sister Boyd said, if we don't use what God gave us and pass it on,
That's what's happening now. The parents is, you got children raising children. And I said, and then when those children don't go to church, they're not gonna send their children to church. So when I came along, you won't know such thing as I'm not going. You knew before Sunday got there, if you had something that had to be ironed or sewed, so you better get it done before Saturday, before Sunday, because you did not hook up no iron, you didn't have to hook it up there to put it on the stove and heat the iron in order to do what you didn't do all that stuff. You did not cook, you didn't even cook. Mom used to cook on Saturday for Sunday. I said, and then you knew, and you had the wash tub that you got in that Saturday night was bath night. I said, how in the world did you feel? You had Saturday night and bath night, and the rest of the night you had the wash pan or little thing, and you hit here and there, and you gone. I said, but when that parent, and it didn't have to be my child, it could be your child, and if somebody saw that child do wrong, they would tell them. They would tell that child, you're doing wrong and stop it. But now somebody, you scared to even look at a child now, because they will curse you out.
My sons told me, because I would tell people, pull your pants up, do such thing. And my sons told me, Mama, you need to stop telling people what to do. He said, because somebody will turn around and shoot you. He said, these people don't play now, And when they stand in the road and don't move, you know what I mean? I wish I could run over them. But you, Miss Myers, you went all the way back. You went all the way back. I tell you, it's the kind of thing, and I say, please forgive me, Lord, but I do. I want to run those boys down. He's standing in the middle, and they see my car coming there, and I slow down, and they still standing in the road, and then they move slowly, I said, boy, you just don't know. You just don't know, because I would tell people, and because I worked with young people, and so I always had rapport with them. So I would say, look, you need to do this and stuff, you need to do that. I said, now, Mom, you need to stop. And it's even when you go to the store, you don't know now when you leave home if you're coming back home. You really don't know. So we have to be ready. We have to be ready. I'm not necessarily ready, but I'm trying to make sure I get ready, because you really don't know the day or the hour. Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate everybody's contribution, and that is it for this for Sunday.
let us give Reverend Goodson another round of applause for an outstanding, eye-opening, and a thought-provoking lesson this morning. We all got questions. Go to God, and you'll get the answer. To those of you in cyber world, take a quick break, but please come back and join us, for there will be a message brought to you by our very own Reverend Sandy Smith. Please come back and join us for morning worship service. Thank you.